Donald Trump's sentencing in the New York hush money case is just 2 days away, and he is throwing a Hail Mary in the direction of the U.S. Supreme Court. Trump's lawyers, Todd Blanche and Emil Bovey, filed an emergency appeal this morning, arguing that justices should block Trump's sentencing because he is protected by the court's ruling on presidential immunity. Keep in mind that Blanche and Bovey have been nominated to take top positions in Trump's incoming Justice Department. And if confirmed, they will go from fighting the law on Trump's behalf to enforcing it. Today, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who handles emergency appeals from the Second Circuit, told New York prosecutors to respond to Trump's request by 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. As the court signals an interest in Trump's appeal, ABC News is reporting, and NBC has confirmed, that Justice Samuel Alito spoke with Donald Trump by phone on Tuesday in a call initiated by Trump to recommend one of Alito's former law clerks for a job in the incoming Trump administration. In a statement, Justice Alito said, "We did not discuss the emergency application he filed today, and indeed, I was not even aware at the time of our conversation that such an application would be filed." Joining me now are Lisa Rubin, MSNBC legal correspondent, and Mark Joseph Stern, who is a senior writer for Slate Magazine. Guys, thank you for being here. Mark, because it's Samuel Alito, I first need your reaction to, just a friendly phone call between buddies. Didn't talk about any of the matters before the court. Sam Alito, Donald Trump. Your thoughts?
I think there is a 0% chance that Sam Alito is telling the truth when he says he did not know that this emergency application would be filed. Trump and his legal team have made it very clear that they would go to the United States Supreme Court to block this sentencing if necessary. Alito reads the news. He doesn't live in a hole. And so I think that he was well aware when he got this phone call that it would look, at a minimum, really bad, that it would raise a lot of questions about what exactly he discussed with the president-elect, and yet he still decided to have the conversation, and to do so about someone who's going to be apparently a low-level appointee in this administration. We're not talking about an appeals court judge or a potential attorney general. We're talking about someone who might be general counsel at a federal agency. The idea that Trump needed Alito to vouch for him and needed him to do so at this moment because it was so urgent, I mean, it really does not pass the sniff test, and it suggests to me that something else was going on here.
Well, also maybe that Sam Alito doesn't care, right? This is someone who has basically said, middle finger to the optics of me being partisan, whether it's my wife raising an insurrectionist flag above two of our houses or taking a call from the president when he's probably going to have really important business before the court. Do you think Sotomayor reaching out and saying, Alvin Bragg, prosecutors, you got to get your filing to me by tomorrow morning, signals that the court is going to take this up and take it up with alacrity?
I think that it is very likely that we'll hear from the court before Friday, but it doesn't necessarily mean, Alex, that we'll have the outcome that Trump would like it to have. I think this is Justice Sotomayor trying to make sure that in the interest of fairness, they have an opportunity to have full briefing and that they can make a decision, not that they will, but that they could make a decision prior to Friday and with ample time to do so.
Mark, how do you read the tea leaves on this in terms of the court? I mean, we'll get into Trump's legal argument in a second, that this is based on the presidential immunity ruling handed down by this very conservative Supreme Court.
I think there's a very good chance that the Supreme Court will step in and halt this sentencing and run interference for Donald Trump yet again and claim that Judge Merchan in New York somehow allowed for illegitimate testimony regarding Trump's official acts. I don't like this prediction. I think this should be laughed out of court. It's a very frivolous appeal. But this court has a track record of stepping in and twisting, contorting the law to help Trump whenever it needs to. And I think the fact that the court is acting very quickly, making sure it can get all of the filing in before Friday, means there is a real chance that they will step in and say this sentencing cannot happen.
Can we talk about Trump's argument? Because I know Mark is not a fan of it holding water with the court, but Trump's lawyers are contending presidential immunity extends to president-elects, and that being a convicted felon is not a good thing to be when you're trying to carry out presidential duties. Here's what I'll say. It's not great to be a convicted felon in America, and a lot of convicted felons can tell you just how much of a mark that is against you even after you've served your time. Is there some weight to that argument at all?
That it would be some opprobrium to him to have this conviction on his record. Look, I don't think that it animates any of the concerns that the court was thinking about when it issued that presidential immunity ruling. What they were really concerned about was, A, distraction in terms of the time it took away from the president, as well as that person being under sort of the shadow of investigation and prosecution while they're conducting their job. Simply being sentenced doesn't do that. In fact, the fact that this man had already been convicted by a jury of 34 felony counts didn't stop him from being elected with 312 electoral votes. So the idea that this is going to stigmatize him in some way that will be irreversible is also kind of laughable when he is going to be, as of Friday, 10 days away from his second inauguration.
Yeah, and the reason, just for people who aren't following, he was convicted of the felony, but he's not a convicted felon until
Correct.
he is sentenced. So there is some meaningful difference, at least rhetorically, between who Donald Trump is on Thursday and who he is on Friday after he's been sentenced.
Particularly given that Judge Merchan has said, I don't intend to sentence him to any incarceration or even probation or any penalties whatsoever. He said in writing his intent is to give him what's called an unconditional discharge. That's basically no penalty whatsoever. All it does is keep the conviction intact. The only reason Donald Trump should or would care about that is because it comes with the label, Alex.
Right. It's the name. It's the spin. It's the messaging. It's the PR.